Thank you. Thank you all. Oh my. Good morning. Heartfelt thanks to you, David, and to the entire staff of Samaritan Ministry, to you, Rasheen, Chair, and the entire Samaritan Ministry Board, for the gracious invitation to allow me to address this astonishing group. And more importantly, thank you for your stewardship of the mission of Samaritan Ministry. And I wonder if you might join me in showing your appreciation for these fine leaders. I add my thanks to those you've already heard, thanking you for gathering on a Saturday morning as we all rededicate ourselves to a ministry that empowers and equips all of us to be the best of who we are and called to be as followers of Jesus. I am always inspired to be among the seasoned, long-standing supporters of Samaritan Ministry, whether here or in the congregations you call home, or the other endeavors of goodness that you support. You are the salt of the earth, because you find your greatest joy and fulfillment in helping other people thrive, and for sustaining spiritual communities and organizations that promote the highest aspirations of humankind. I learn from you every day. And I'd like to add as well a warm welcome to anyone who might be here for the first time. And if we haven't met already, please introduce yourself to me later this morning. I would love to personally thank you for your presence today and your interest in a ministry that means so much to so many. And I am honored to speak to you in the name of God, revealed to us in Jesus, whose parable of the Good Samaritan embodies what it looks like not only to love, but to be loved by a neighbor. Now, you recall the story. Jesus told it in response to a question that a lawyer asked, who wanted to know what he needed to inherit eternal life. That was a biblical way of asking what he needed to do to be right with God and to be assured of God's mercy at the hour of his death. And Jesus characteristically responded to the lawyer's question with a question of his own. What is written in the scriptures? What do you read there? And the lawyer answers. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says, essentially, yeah, that's it. Do those things, and you'll be fine. But as you recall, the lawyer presses Jesus further, wanting to justify himself, the text tells us, asking, and who is my neighbor? In other words, where are the boundaries? Or more bluntly, who belongs within my circle of concern? And more importantly, who doesn't? It's a question that goes to the heart of who we are to one another. You don't need me to tell you that we are witnessing a dramatic realignment in our national priorities that are drawing the circle tighter with real life consequences for many people, both locally and beyond. And if we're honest with ourselves, it's a question that we struggle with too. Who belongs within our circles of concern, and who doesn't? And Jesus, as you know, turns the lawyer's question on its head with the story of a man robbed, beaten, and left for dead on the side of the road. And the two religious leaders travel down the same road, see the wounded man, and pretend that they didn't, because at that moment, he was outside, their circle of concern. And then another man, notably of a despised race, travels down the same road, sees the same man, has compassion, and does all that he can to save his life. And the brilliance of this story, like all the stories Jesus tells, is that we can see ourselves in every character, right? Because surely we know that there are times when we are the ones wounded and in need of mercy, and there are those times when we try not to see the needs of a given person because we tell ourselves, I tell myself, we don't have the bandwidth now. I don't have the time to respond in a caring way, essentially placing that person in that moment outside my circle of concern. And then by God's grace, there are those times when we do, in fact, act with compassion and solidarity, not out of arrogance or a sense of superiority, but in recognition of our common humanity and the need we all have, for compassion and mercy. Who was the neighbor to the wounded man? Jesus asked the lawyer, as if he had to, right? The one who showed him mercy. Go and do likewise. Right? So my first job out of college was as a caseworker at a social service agency, not unlike Samaritan Ministry, run by the United Methodist Church in Tucson, Arizona. And this was dating myself now, this was in the early 1980s, when manufacturing jobs in the northeastern United States abruptly disappeared, right? And thousands of people packed up all their belongings in their cars and drove to the Southwest looking for work. And they landed in offices like the one I was working in. And my job, at the age of 22, was to learn all that I could about the person or family in need and then do what I can, scrambling among Methodist churches to find resources in the community that would help them make a new start. Now, suffice to say that many of the people with whom I worked had not always made the best life choices. And those choices contributed to, and maybe and always made worse, the dire straits they found themselves in through no fault of their own, right? It was a cumulative, compounding reality. And I did my best to be compassionate and understanding and helpful. But truth be told, at first, I didn't have empathy for those I served because I couldn't see myself in their circumstances, right? I just couldn't imagine that would ever happen to me. But then, young adult that I was, I made a series of poor choices that I will leave to your imagination. And things could have gone very badly for me. I mean, really badly. Were it not for the people who had mercy upon me and helped me dig a way out of a situation that I had largely brought about myself. Not entirely, but largely. And they helped me one painful step at a time. And a lot changed for me as a result of that. One of them being that I became a far more effective caseworker for those seeking assistance. Now, you know your Gospels. Jesus could not be more clear about this. How do we learn mercy? By receiving mercy. How do we learn forgiveness? By being forgiven. How do we learn to love? By being loved. How do we learn to welcome the foreigners among us? By the experience of being a foreigner ourselves. And the more I live with Jesus' story of the Good Samaritan, I find myself wondering more and more about the man left for dead on the roadside who came to consciousness to realize that the one who saved his life was someone he had been taught all of his life to despise and fear. Think about that, right? And while Jesus wanted the lawyer to see the Samaritan as one to emulate, I wonder if the real power here is in seeing ourselves as the wounded person in need of mercy. How can our hearts not be opened to love as we have been loved, to care as we have been cared for? That's what I love about Samaritan Ministry. I mean, I really love this. My husband Paul and I have been supporters since we came to Washington in 2011, and we will renew our commitment here today because, like you, we are grateful to be called by God to be part of a wider community that, and this is right out of the Samaritan Ministry Handbook, right? Part of a community that brings together neighbors, some who face poverty, homelessness, or other debilitating challenges with partner, leaders, donors, volunteers, and staff in a shared ministry that improves the lives of all throughout the Washington area, one step, one neighbor at a time. Samaritan's Ministry, as you know, its focus is empowerment and engagement in relationships of mutuality and accountability, right? We are all in this together. And its core values, again, inspired by the Good Samaritan parable, are compassion, transformation, dignity, community. And we hear the mutuality in these values, the humility, and the courage to see one another, in the words of an old Baptist hymn, all of us standing in the need of prayer. All of us standing in the need of mercy. All of us within God's circle of concern. And I am here today because I believe so strongly in the mission and ministry of Samaritan Ministry, whose signature offering echoes one of the spiritual mantras of my life: taking the next faithful step. When we don't know what to do or what the future holds or where the road will lead, what God invites us to do is to take the next faithful step. And every day, as you know, Samaritan Ministry caseworkers meet with participants and help them map out for their lives the next step and then support them in taking it. And should they falter, as we all do, they're there to help them get back on their feet and start again. And when they succeed, they're there to cheer them on. That's how it works. That's how life transformation works. Not once, not all at once, but one step at a time. I'd like to speak to you now about the next faithful step for the organization itself, the organization we're here to support. As David alluded, for all that the amazing good that has been accomplished in the last year, it was a challenging year. Financial setbacks, leadership changes that have required some pretty deep soul searching, an honest assessment of where things stand and what the future trajectory needs to be. And if you think about it, in a very real way, Samaritan Ministry finds itself in a similar place as many of the people we're called to serve. In a dramatically changing economic environment that we have struggled to keep pace with, and facing the needed changes that we as an organization need to make, right? While at the same time, the needs of our communities are rising as more and more people find themselves out of work and at the end of whatever ropes they're holding on to. So we could not be more needed at a time when we are facing some of our greatest existential challenges, right? So what are we to do? We do the same thing that we encourage those who come to us for assistance, right? We take the next step, using the same principles of assessment and goal setting and accountability, the same goals that we teach to our participants. We take the next step. We face head-on the challenges with faith and a collective commitment to make necessary changes to adapt and thrive in a world we would not have chosen, but we find ourselves in. Right? We take the next step. We set some realistic expectations and focus our efforts where we believe we have the greatest capacity to make an impact. And we take the next step remembering that we never walk alone. And we build upon relationships and partnerships that have sustained us these many years. So I'm here, along with many others, to ask those of you in a position to do so, and I know not all of you are, but those of you who are in a position to do so, to increase your commitment to Samaritan Ministry in this pivotal time. And to walk with these courageous leaders as they take faithful steps toward missional and financial sustainability. And I'm here to assure you, as Bishop of the Diocese of Washington, that we are fully committed to taking these steps with you, because there's no doubt, have no doubt in your mind that Samaritan Ministry is mission critical for the Diocese of Washington. And as just one sign of that commitment, I have the authorization to make an immediate $75,000 grant this morning. No. You need to know, sit. This comes from, I just want you to know where this money comes from, right? Because it's not like I can just pull this out of my ear, right? This comes from, we have, in times of hardship, we did this during COVID too, right? In times of hardship, one of the things that we do is we sort of scour everything, right? Everything we've got. And we have a few funds that we have amplified or that we've preserved over time that are for like emergency situations, right? And we're going to make some of those available to our congregations because we know how many people are facing trouble right now. But as we looked at it, and as we looked at what's happening, and by the way, people have been sending me money, right? And that money doesn't belong to me, right? Because anything I have said or done ever, has been a reflection of the values and the commitments that we hold dear as a people, right? I know that, and you know that. I have never said anything from any pulpit that you would not have heard in your own congregations. So, right? Am I right? Right? So let's just be clear about that. This is who we are. And so we decided that in that spirit, what better way than to invest in an organization that is dedicating to the empowerment of our people on both sides of the Potomac River, right? So as you consider your gift today, I ask you to do a few things. Remember a time when you were in need of mercy, when you couldn't see the way ahead, and someone was there to help you take the next faithful step. As you consider your gift today, consider what it would be like if Samaritan Ministry didn't exist. What a hole it would leave in the fabric of our communities. And then do what you can to help us take the next faithful step. And finally, consider our part in this moment in our country's history and what God needs from us now. As a church, we're not big, but we hold as central to our witness as Christians the dignity of every human being as a child of God, the virtues of honesty, humility, mercy, and sacrificial love. In all honesty, I can't see very far ahead these days, but I know what it feels like to take a faithful step, and so do you. And we can do that together. And what a gift it is to be among one another. What a gift it is for me to be among you, those today who love and support a ministry that calls us to care as God cares and to love as God loves. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing.